the U.S., even transferring it. You're going to be limited to debit, credit cards, and paying interest to the bank. That's it. Your money's there. You're pretty much stuck with the house. Like, they won't let you exit now. If you do, you only have a very, 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 should I say it again, very short window. So anyway, it's great Friday, sunny today. The planets were in a line, weren't they, Ransom? Yeah, Ransom Godwin joining me tonight. I think the planets were all in a line just a few days ago. I stepped out last night, and I only saw the regular early planets, Mercury, Venus, out in the sky. I didn't see Mars or anything further back, Jupiter. But what a great day to be alive. What a great day to be alive. Say it again. Oh, this is the best day I've ever lived. I'm so happy and grateful and thankful for being here. Take that deep breath. Oh, I need to Ransom. Sorry, man. I need to add you into the call. That was rookie mistake. My bad on that. I was in a rush. Like I said, I've been out at the barn. I was in a rush to get back in and get on the call here. So let me add Ransom, our participant. Now, he's a friend. He's not a participant. Well, there we go. So, yeah, that's how distracted I've been. Okay, the news is one thing. The news is happening at light speed. But in the real world, you know, this getting through the day to be able to get the tasks done, to be able to produce food and keep up with it. It's like a quadruple espresso morning just to get through the morning's 4 hours of news. You know, it's ridiculous now. Thanks for joining, Ransom.
Thanks for having me. I made a technical boo-boo, and there was no audio for probably the first 30 seconds. And I was wondering if you could repeat that. I heard it, but no one else did.
Oh, I'm just busy right now trying to get life for myself ready to produce food and produce overabundance for others. I'm out with my trees, pruned them. We're trying to bend down the branches to get more fruit production. We got whacked at the knees on the blossoms coming out from the last cold spell. So hopefully we can get, hopefully there's a few, flower buds left in there. Leaves are coming out. Focusing on fertilizing, like trying to figure out new areas, plant new blueberries. Amish farm just opened. We bought a bunch of plants from them. But then at the same time, need to keep up with all this ruckus going off across the planet. Getting stretched thin. I came in late tonight, so welcome.
Yeah, you sent me that link to that lake, and I've been watching that for probably, when they started talking about that it was going to flood. And I bet a lot of people that live around here, unless they're or around there, unless they're really old, didn't even know that there was a lake there. And the fact that it's above sea level, so whatever has drained off in there that can't drain off now it's just going to be there.
Yeah, that's Tulare Lake for those of you. Tulare Lake in California.
And you could imagine, they're talking about it's going to be around, throughout the winter into next summer, but they're assuming that more rain doesn't start coming as a new pattern. They're completely assuming that it's going to dry up like it's been for the last couple decades, but they may be wrong about that. It was funny because you said that the term suddenly, because that's how that lake showed up. And for a lot of people, I imagine that was an eye-opening experience to realize that they've been farming and living down there in the bottom of a lake. And it's got to make you wonder how many more places are like that, not only in the United States, but around the world, that are one weather system away from returning to the way that they had been in the past. New marshes showing up because of water drainage, because we have the biggest snowpack. I'm pretty sure that that's setting records almost everywhere in the Rocky Mountains right now for snowpack. And obviously that means a lot of runoff and a lot of meltwaters this spring. And it just makes me think of the whole food supply chain that we have, especially through the rivers of the United States. And we talked about that whenever we were talking about how the grains were, just laying out there and wait till spring flooding. And we're about to get that. we're about to get a bunch of tornadoes, not an excess number of tornadoes, but enough tornadoes and damage that the global warming hacks will be pushing. Oh, look at the storms, like they do every year, and trying to convince people that, they're the cause of it. And the more and more weather phenomenon that happens, you notice how no matter what happens, they always go with the idea that man created the scenario, no matter what it is, no matter which part of a cycle you're in, no matter how many times something has frozen or thawed or flooded or caught on fire, they will say that the new, event is because of you and man. I mean, they're not letting go of this idea of blaming human beings for everything. And even though times seem to be headed towards a rough patch for everybody, from the middle class down, they seem to be cutting everything off in anticipation for some kind of, event that's going to tip over the scales. And I've been mainly paying attention to my area lately about news headlines, and what I'm seeing is kind of unnerving because Washington argues back and forth about the border and what's going on at the border, whether it's not happening or it is happening. It doesn't take too much research to figure out that over the past 20 years, an excess of 20 million to 40 million new people have arrived in the United States and Canada, and they're coming more and more at a time. And just the other day, a big fire happened in Juarez, Mexico, which burned up a bunch of migrants that were being held there by the Mexican authorities, and they lit the thing on fire and tried to riot from the inside. And they killed themselves with a fire that they started as the guards just kind of walked away from it when the flames were going everywhere. But if you lived in the local area, you probably didn't hear about it. So like if you lived in El Paso, you might have heard about it. But if you live in any of the surrounding communities, you probably didn't hear about it because the local media is not showing you what's happening just 50 to 70 to 90 miles, depending on which town you live in, where there is a war zone going on. And thousands of people a day are trying to rush not only the border checks and just push their way in physically, which doesn't usually turn out too good, but under the bridges, they just walk in and they're greeted by the Border Patrol because they were told to do that. So they just let them in. And it's just the idea that any of these little towns in the area are going to stay stable when millions upon millions of people are coming in. It's mind-boggling, the fiction that they're telling the people that live there. And meanwhile, we're seeing a war zone develop right over here while everybody's paying attention to everything else. And I kind of wanted to get to the distraction idea for you because something's happening in excess speed right now, in my opinion, because that's why they're throwing all of this stuff at everybody. You know, I'm sure you saw what happened in Tennessee because you live there, and that was dominating the news one way or another. They're pulling the news using events to pull the heartstrings of everyone on every side of any idea at the same time as the stuff, this television show of the Trump. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of his show that he had, where he was like, you're fired. Anyway, they just continued that show on, and they're going to keep doing it. So in the backdrop behind the war headlines of Ukraine and arresting former president for the first time in history, you got to know something big is happening behind, the soap opera-like headlines that are across any news outlet, including the ones that are supposed to be giving you, not so distributed information, I've noticed have toned down everything, and everyone is scared about the censorship. And not only the censorship, will you be thrown in jail for some of the ideas that you're having? And then I'm sure you've paid attention to this, the ban on TikTok. And when you look into that, that's nothing more than another opportunity for our own government to find out how they could spy and track everyone. And then we have to deal with food prices just climbing seemingly for no reason. And with all of the stuff that I learned from you about markets and food, which I want to let you get into, about how everything is just decreasing. So the bubble, so to speak, of the food, stability across first world nations is inevitably about to pop to at least concern some of the population if they're not concerned about some of the other things that are being hidden from them.
Well, the distraction you're seeing currently, I can try to sum it up for you. I mean, this is my opinion. The USDA has finally come out and admitted in the year 2021, we did not grow enough food to feed the planet. That overall, as an average, we had to dig into the carryover stocks of the planet and pull from those reserves because we did not grow enough food 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and we're still at a deficit for wheat and other grain commodities that we, for the third year in a row, did not grow enough to feed the planet, pulling into the stocks continuously. Now, I will say it again, as we come into late July this year, which is just a few months away, you are going to see the all-time biggest, most scariest, unbelievable ozone destruction and runaway catastrophic ozone depletion event. That is going to, it's not just going to spook the world. It's actually going to downright frighten and terrify the planet as to how much UVB radiation will strike the ground. The crop losses in this is going to be staggering in an already depleted world where we don't grow enough food. That's just a couple months from now. We're coming into the planting season as we speak, and now the farmers are starting to look for their supplies and their farm inputs. Now you have to think about from the year 2021 to the year 2022, all farm inputs tripled across the board. They hit all-time record prices for everything in the farm ag space imaginable. And I'm talking about inputs, not the food. The fertilizer, the potash, whatever it is, the DAP, the ammonium phosphate. Well, there's so many of the phosphates, the herbicides, the different pesticides, the Roundups, the cornerstone, whatever they're using. Because all those chemicals came from the same factories used natural gas from Europe that got shut down. This year, it's going to triple again. The farmers are out looking for their fertilizer, and some of these prices they're throwing in the towel. They simply can't afford it, and the crop insurance won't cover that until it gets to a certain maturity before crop insurance will kick in. So a lot of farmers aren't willing to take the chance on paying even a 2 or 3x increase from last year to the all-time record highs prices coming again for all farm inputs. But the crop insurance from the USDA, again, does not cover them until it's planted and emerges. So they need to take the risk of catastrophic flooding across. Here we got Utah breaks the state largest snowpack ever. The Pareto Dam, also in California, going into that same lake system that we were talking about a little bit earlier. The Tulare Lake, every single feeder into that lake is overtopping, and all 7 or 8 of those dams and reservoirs are using their emergency spillways because so much water had come down. That's why the lake's filling up. Everything that's a reservoir up there is on emergency spillway. Think Oroville Dam. And they've diverted everything they possibly could into the rivers, and it still was overflowing to start to flood major areas and also every single smaller town. So what they decided to do was cut a hole in the levee and let all that water spill back into the lake to contain it. They think it may dry out, but if we're looking at such disruptions already this early in the season, and another 2 or 3, 4 arc storms are lined up to come in from Asia here over California over this next, say, 3 weeks, there's 4 more storms of equivalency of record rains coming in a row. This thing is going to continue to fill. I watched the most amazing, deep dive into it. Blanco Rio, who I'd followed from the Oroville Dam days, he pulled up some maps, and the last time the dam was filling this quickly and reaching peripheral areas of where is that? 1876. So I'm going, that's a long time back. That's 150 years back. Nobody's prepared for this. A huge amount of crops has grown in this dried up lake bed. when we start to see this catastrophic losses of food, once people understand the UVB radiation, the crop loss in the southern hemisphere, the tripling again of farm inputs, and then the loss of our California grow zone, at least the predominantly vegetable growing in these same areas that are flooding now, that probably won't dry out for years, plural. You need a distraction from that. So as Ransom and I had talked about, they were going to pull the plug in demolition of the economy. Okay, that's in play as we speak. So you know you're getting close. There's only two things left that can happen. Okay, the continued implosion of the economic system is going to distract you from the food shortages and the non-availability of food. Now, so far they're framing it as there is exponentially rising food prices because of the war, this, the drought there, this, that. Once the world understands, and I say this, like people are starting to wake up to the economy about that. Just the average person is waking up to the plight of the economy. When the average person wakes up to the plight that every single year from this point forward, we're not going to grow enough food from the planet, and we are pulling out of the carryover stocks for the last 3 years in a row because we couldn't refill them. And at some point, that goes to zero. And after that, really, is all you grow is all you get for the year. There will be no more pullout from carryover stocks because there will be none. There's going to be mass global starvation. That is way scarier than a controlled demolition of the economy to switch and move all of the wealth over to a new system. It's nothing more than a transference. So if you're out there and you're worried about this, protect yourself. It's a transference of wealth. There's nothing organic happening with this economic contagion right now. It's all planned. It's planned to move the wealth, natural resources, and anything of value out of the Western world and redeposit it over into the new emerging economy, which will take off like a scalded dog for 80 years. That's what's happening. So if you just look back through history and go, gold, silver, food, medicines, tradables, tools, gee, that's the things that have been used time immemorial. Now you're going to need to protect them. You're going to need to protect them. That's the only thing. If you know, you can clearly see the blueprint. Now, I will say one last thing, Ransom, here. The distraction we need, not me, we and as a planet, but these idiots at the World Economic Foundation and the Bank for International Settlements wants to start a digital SDR, which is central bank for all the central banks on the planet wants to start a central bank digital currency, all electronic for the entire planet as one world currency, which participating banks would issue their own central bank digital currencies stemming back to the original one world currency. That's in play as we speak. So the alien invasion is the only thing that could possibly trump this. What you are watching is the most rapid, unbelievable speed at which this has occurred. I could talk more about that, but I've been rambling, and just the food is what they're trying to distract away from. We just literally can't grow enough anymore for all the people left on the planet. So that's the simple answer. Now, if you were a government and you knew through history hungry crowds toppled every government through the last 7,000 years, I think I would try to distract away as long as I could too, economy. Then you can explain away why there's food shortages. It was never because of bad planning from the 70s and 80s and 90s. Nope, couldn't be. They didn't warn you at the year 2000 when they had this information. Could have gotten ready. The whole planet could have gotten ready, but that would have taken us off centralized systems. So here we sit today. Anyway, that's my rant, and I hope I answered your question. Well, Ransom, I'll wait for you to come back again here.
Sorry, I double tapped mute.
Oh, you did? Okay, mute. Bring it on, man. Lake Basin's filling. We're wasting time.
Right. I was gonna say it's all in your face about the digital currency and how they're planning on popping the dollar. Almost every headline's talking about either the strengthening of the BRICS nations coming together to try to offset the petrodollar, and then I'm seeing, you know, all of these countries that traditionally did business with the United States and Britain and other countries now making contracts with China, like Saudi Arabia. They're ready to fill the pumps. They're ready to help China become the next level economy. And I know that China is in trouble right now. So when I see all of these deals being made, it makes me wonder if actually they had already planned for bad times just like everyone else, and for them to be one of the world leaders at the other side of it. And I always wonder how much gold they might have over there. And you're seeing that across the news headlines too. Gold gains as banks buckle again and more dollar dumped. And here's one right here. Wow, if I would kept it open. Reopen my tab here. It's talking about Saudi Arabia, you know, planning on being the world's largest crude oil exporter, but they're not going to be sending that oil to us. It's going to China. So you can see that every summer, and I was waiting for this because, you know, when summer comes, they always up the gas prices. It's every year. And this is when you get that Walmart effect. If you've ever noticed the rolling back prices scam at Walmart, basically what they do is they slowly raise the prices all year, and then they roll it back to just a little bit higher than it already was. And they do that with the gas every year. So I'm waiting for the next excuse to roll out in the headlines of why the gas prices are going to skyrocket. But at the same time, it's becoming obvious to anybody. I mean, you can go article after article. Food prices will rise again in 2023, putting more pressure on families while their money continues to decrease in value. And then why California's floods are jacking up food prices. There's one that's already linking the current floods to why there's no food. And if you remember just a few years ago, they were blaming wildfires for why they couldn't do this or that. And it's like a steady stream of excuses of why the downgrading of civilization is happening. And what used to be incremental seems to be all at once now. Bangladesh journalists charged over story about rising food prices. So you could already see different countries starting to lock people up for telling people what's going on. Food prices are expected to rise more, and the cost may be too heavy to bear for many. And always in every single one of these articles, which I'd like to get to, is the climate crisis. And they're saying it may undo last century's achievement in curbing extreme hunger. So they already have this ready to roll out, why that humans ruin the earth. And now, you know, every storm and every tide and every, hot day that's a degree over any record somewhere, they'll be shoving it in your face as proof of why you can't eat and why you can't turn on the lights and why your money's not worth anything. While they build this new system that they're obviously about to transfer all of the wealth over to, and that's why you keep seeing banks failing. More and more, they're trying to give a reason why that they're going to, depending on which country it is, either switch over to the brinks or put all their faith into a centralized digital dollar backed by, of course, the central banking cartel or the reserve banks, if you want to call it that. Here's another article. Brazil and China signed pact to abandon the dollar. The two BRICS nations will now reportedly trade in their own currencies back and forth. And you see this across the board. So is the petrodollar or the American dollar ready to finally pop? Lots of people that have talked about economics, and they're not even using other factors. They were only using the factor of the Federal Reserve Bank and the entire system of centralized banking, that the bubble would pop eventually. But now you're seeing all of these other indicators that they are ready for the proverbial bubble to pop. And then what happens to people's savings and the worth of their money? For all of those people that were planning on retiring or doing this or that, they're going to find out that their money is not going to go as far because basically the wealth of the wealth behind the money is being slowly transferred or turned off completely by obvious design. And I'm wondering at which point will people stop paying attention to the kind of fake left-right paradigm, fake wrestling soap opera type news and information, and start actually thinking about ways to combat obvious planned attacks on the food for everyone. And I'm seeing it, everybody fixing their houses and putting money away, and I actually think that's quite a good idea. If you have a large amount of disposable income saved up and you're at the right age, why not go ahead and build you a homestead? And while you're doing that, go ahead and update the style of living to where if the lights turn off or the money's just worth nothing overnight, you're going to be fine because you've already, invested in lots of seeds and ways to grow food where you could just walk outside and get some food, even if it's food that the masses don't recognize. And we've talked about this a lot of times, but at what point do the general public realize things are falling apart, and how fast will that weigh on their psyche as far as bizarre behavior? Because we're already seeing a lot of bizarre behavior in society right now. Lots of fights over ideas that really have nothing to do with feeding mankind or helping mankind. But those are the debates that fill 100% of the time and the mind of the masses. And, while I'm over here thinking about how I'm going to plan out an entire summer of food and where I'm going to put it, how I'm going to put it, how I'm going to make sure that it's safe and all of that. Other people just don't have that on mind. And they think that their jobs are secure too. What happens when all of the government employees that work for the government, which is a large portion of our population at this point, can no longer draw wealth from the middle class? What happens to that? That's a lot more hungry mouths to feed. And we generally just think of poor people. But what about all the people that just don't produce anything? And then when things come to push and shove, how do I say it? Their career really doesn't fit into the real world when it comes to filling bellies.
Yeah. What would be good skills to have to be able to fill your belly? Because I'll just tell you from my own, I'm putting some extra accommodation out on the farm because I want to start getting some people out here. But if you are, at one of the professional levels of a career and you've never lifted a shovel, unless you're investing, then you have nothing of a skill that we would need. The only thing we would need was be more finances to build more and buy more tools and, like you say, solar panels and these kind of things to get ready for power outages and be able to be self-sufficient, have more people living out here to be able to, provide security for us. But the skills we're going to need are vast and many. Think 1860s, pioneering lifestyle. If you're a blacksmith, welcome. If you know how to do woodworking, I'd love to have you. If you know how to do woodworking and you know how to garden, sheesh, he'll feed you up and you could stay forever. It's like these kind of things are going to be the skills that will take us through.
You don't need anybody with
the warning of another deposit run here. So Barclays Bank is the next one that's having a deposit run. And I saw all through the news the last 2 days about banking CEOs blaming the people for taking their money out. Bad mismanagement of bank. But see, the culprit is the American person who had money in the bank. They moved their money out so quickly. How dare they? Because it's actually not your money. You're an unsecured depositor in the bank. So please remember that. You don't own that money. You give the bank your money, and they classify that as an unsecured loan, which they may decide to pay or not pay back. You gave them the right to hold their money in your behalf. You have no claim to it. You have a claim to it unless they say no, and then you're stuck with the house. And all you can do is use your credit card and pay interest. You can never pull it out, and you're just going to use it until it dwindles to zero. And they'll probably try to charge you a fee to turn off your credit card. Barclays is another bank run happening as we speak. So the more bank runs they are, because everything's happening so much faster now in real time, Now, I get it, what they're trying to talk about. Yeah, people can move money out so quickly with the flick of a finger. You can transfer $1 million with the press of a button in 5 minutes. Why shouldn't we be able to do that? Well, if your bank's so poorly mismanaged that people on Twitter and Reddit can figure out that your bank is insolvent and about to collapse 2 weeks before the regulators from the Federal Reserve or the CFTC or any kind of administration will find that error, and why, social media should not be 2 weeks ahead and also then be the one sounding the trumpet of an insolvent bank to pull your money out. The people at the speed of light that are following these conversations, pull your money. I think you should. Get it while you can. You realize that they're not going to give it back to you. So now what the whole talk is limiting what you can pull out of your bank per day. That's called capital controls. Think of Cyprus, because I have a friend of mine, Constantine, who I chat back and forth with, and he is from Cyprus. And he was telling me all the stories of the day. He's like, David, I tell you, I could only get 20 euro out sometimes, some days. Sometimes they would raise it to 40 euro, but I could only, a very wealthy person, very professional, trades metals, and was limited to 20 euro a day to pull out of the bank. That's the kind of things that are happening. Again, it's all because there's not going to be enough food. And, gold, you mentioned gold, like how much gold does China have? Currently, everything that is publicly reported go 4x. A multiplier of 4 should be a pretty good indication of what the China holdings are. Most people put 4x on what the public release is. Now, when it comes down to the U.S. dollar, as more and more countries go away from using the dollar, that money is going to start flowing back here to America. It's all going to come back in debt back to us as an individual holder of the whole in America. So you're going to have to eat the inflation or the devalued dollarness, if there is such a term. The revaluation that I've heard seen spoken about seems to fall into one of these two numbers, 100 to 1,000 times. So if you had $1,000 in the bank, you will be reissued $1 new, or you'll be reissued $10 new. That's why Lynette Zhang, when I was talking to her, she's like, David, the first reset, you need to get out and cash out in the first reset. Because that will be where everybody will be so discombobulated and so confused as to what's going on. If you already have a plan on how to exit something, because let's say they do a 10 to 1. You could literally pay your house off for a few hands full of silver. Now, if they do 1,000 to 1, you're talking paying an entire house off with a few ounces of silver. So she's saying that it always goes like this through history. There's always 3 resets. And on the 4th one, it completely collapses and they started completely over from zero. Means there's no reset money at all. It's a zero-sum game. You lost 100% of everything. So the first reset is when you want to pull out. So again, generally that first reset is going to be between 100 and 1,000x. And then the second reset gets ridiculous numbers like 10,000 to 1 or 100,000 to 1. And then the third reset's like Zimbabwe style, 100 million to 1. It gets stupid. And then they have to knock the zeros off and nobody believes it. And then that's why they have to reset to a new complete system backed by something. Backed by something. But what is that something? I can't think of anything in the United States unless we get our industries back up and running again. These things we're talking about are very real and they're very scary. If you think about food shortages in cities where they might leave and then drive out to the countryside starving and looking for food, that's one thing to think about. But if the entire economy collapsed and people got reset at 100 to 1 and they're starving and there's no food and the government's explaining away the food shortages are based on the greedy individual depositors who took their money out, so they have to limit and now totally restrict you from pulling any money out of your bank at all. Zero. You will not be allowed to pull it out. You'll be able to spend it with credit card and pay your debts and service your mortgage electronically. You will not be able to transfer out. You will not be able to hit the ATM to get your money. In the beginning, this is what I was told also. They will allow you to have capital control pulls between $20 and probably $50 a day in the beginning. But after that, there'll be another crisis and it will go to zero cash. You will only be limited to electronics, however that pans out, unless you have barterables. And then you're locked in. You're locked in with the house. Yay, stuck with the house. Spend it till it dwindles to nothing. And that's the way I see it sort of playing out on this edge. Now, the thing is, how quickly will it go? Because so far these last 2 weeks have just blown my mind like hyperspace, like ripped my mind. The cells in my brain are like, plasma orbs that just exploded into 1,000 universes of trying to figure out this information. Like the quickness of it is the scariest thing. I say it again, like earlier in the show. Like 2 weeks ago, this was not on anybody's radar. The bank run hits at SVB, and then suddenly the entire planet is shifted out of the dollar in 2 weeks. And they talked about Operation Sandman, where they said in a single day, the entire world will shift out of the dollar. Well, maybe that's the psyop, that you're looking for a single day event when right now we're in multiple week event, and it's happening exactly the same way it would play out with Operation Sandman 2.0, but weeks instead of days. I think we're getting played. They keep telling you, look at the day. It's a one-day event. It's a one-day thing. Look at Sandman 2.0, one day. Nope, we're getting strung along because you can't tell me ASEAN also just pulled out of using the dollar. They're going to use Chinese central bank clearing. Brazil, that's another huge one. Saudi Arabia, that's the nail in the coffin. I'm sorry to say anybody from the United States or northern hegemony, Western nations, the dollar will not be used as the single reserve currency to purchase oil. That was the only thing that kept the dollar strong, was they were forcing the rest of the planet at gunpoint to use dollars to buy oil. That luxury is gone. So we're going to come down to fair value for the dollar, which will probably come in probably somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 to 1. Some people say higher if you count in the derivatives. At that point, you're looking at 100,000 to 1 million to 1. So even the millionaires would come out with a single dollar at the end of it. So the numbers are absurd. But anyway, they're going to scrape every small saver's cash. They're going to limit your withdrawals. They're going to blame you because you pulled your money or wanted to pull your money out of the bank. And that's how it's going to roll. So solutions are, again, got to get ready to grow your own food at the bare minimum, because Barclays is happening right now. It's a second deposit run ongoing as we speak. So isn't that nice? Happy Friday.
You sure you don't have room out there for somebody with the gender studies degree? I mean, I could help you guys figure out who's male or maybe wants to be female or female and wants to be male while you guys are working. And I can take pictures with the little sickle and the hammer for you guys, for advertising purposes. So everybody knows that you're diverse out there at the ranch with all those carpenters and technicians, building a little side civilization. I'm kidding.
And then you wanted to take the house and farm just because you're you, right?
Yeah, that's right. Because I deserve. No, I have a feeling we're going to have to deal with a lot more of the I deserve people in the coming times. And
they're going to get smoked out here.
Well, yeah, but they're going to be around, and you saw them chanting. They're chanting everywhere. There's for this reason or that reason or the other reason, but none of those reasons ever have to do with anything meaningful for mankind. Excuse me. Humankind. No, but my point is,
I am reducing your social credit score.
If that when they roll that out, they'll probably just give me a -20 already. I mean, I have a little.
You're starting off strong.
Back and forth with YouTube on Twitter, and they've responded by doing some really weird stuff to my channel. So it's amazing that people on Mountain High Time are watching this, because I don't know why, but I'm not banned, even though I have 2 strikes, and they told me I'd be banned for some weird reason, a glitch or something. But what's weird is they banned me for talking about something, and so I pointed out that something probably thousands of times on Twitter to YouTube specifically, and I think they got upset because they started removing videos from my channel without even giving me strikes, just to point out that they could turn me off at any time. So I thought that was funny. But back to what we were talking about. We talked not long ago when you asked me how long I thought that the conflict probably in the Ukraine area would last. And I said, I think that they're going to drag it out about a decade. And I was just reading this article that kind of fits into all of the stuff you were talking about as far as economic patterns. And I wanted to show this article to everybody here that's watching. So it says World Bank warns of lost economic decade as turmoil spreads. And they go on to talk about how all of the people in the banking industries and different things are talking about how decades of high inflation, raising interest rates are, just causing more banking crises in the Western world, and recession risks and all of these things are going to lead to decades of economic turmoil. And this is quote unquote from the World Bank's chief economic and senior vice president for development. A lost decade could be in the making for global economies. Oh, wow. That's like a whole 10 years they're planning. So it says nearly all economic forces that powered progress and prosperity over the last 3 decades are fading. As a result, between 2022 and 2030, average global potential GDP growth is expected to decline by roughly a third from the rate that prevailed in the first decade of this century, down to 2.2%. And I think that's kind of a positive outlook if nobody's trading and everybody's worried about, eating. For developing economies, the decline will be equally steep, from 6% a year between 2000 and 2010 to 4% a year over the remainder of that decade, this decade. They were talking in an older paper. And it's gotten a lot worse. So now they're talking about literally the whole world declining its GDP by at least a third. And that's kind of a positive outlook. And then bringing up back to what you were saying, you see countries across the board signing pacts to abandon the dollar, which means that, eventually our money here will be worth nothing and the buying power won't be what it used to be. Ironically, when I was a kid, I used to go to Mexico across the border and buy alcohol and buy clothes. I could go over there and say, I want a pair of jeans that looks like this, and they would make me like 5 more pair of them at a third of the cost or a tenth of the cost. If I wanted custom, anything, I could go down there and get it for really cheap. And then at some point, when they started the new trade deals, I think it was NAFTA, shortly after that, violence started happening about who could make the money there along the border. And then it got to the point where now, when you go to Mexico, clothes are very expensive. Food is cheap. Clothes are expensive. And then people are coming from Mexico over here to the United States to buy clothing because it's cheaper. And I think that trend's going to continue until the United States realizes that we don't really make anything. And we're basically a third world tourist spot. And then what happens, you were talking about when the people start wandering out from the cities, it's an obvious plan that they're trying to cram everybody in the cities, which means the only real product of some of the Western countries will be the land that was traditionally owned by families. And even here in the U.S., corporations are buying up every little spot of land that they can, every bit of the farmland, every little bit of commercial real estate. It's becoming increasingly more common for people to be stuck in a payment system than ever owning anything from their car to their home. And you were talking about the reduction of the value of the dollar just kind of, popping up on people. I've realized for some time, even though I live at a lower standard of living than some other people, I actually own my land and I own my vehicles and I own my tools and I have all of these things that, I wasn't rich, but I knew I needed certain things. So I got a hold of them and owned them. Now I can go driving around in an upper middle class neighborhood where they have $1 million homes. And I have a little laugh at the fact that a good portion of those people are still living on credit and borrowing. Their car is not theirs. They are leasing it, or they're making payments on it. Their house is the same way. Either, they are renting at a really high month-to-month rate, or they're making payments on that home to own it because they didn't actually have the money to afford the standard of living that they're trying to perpetrate. All of those people are going to be in the same boat as all of the poor people when events like this happen. Not only will they not be able to get food any easier than the rest of everyone else, but they won't be able to get to their money that usually gives them a step up on everyone else. And not to mention, if you've been paying attention, repo rates are at an all-time high like they've never been before. People are not paying their payments now, and the repo guys are out in force. Matter of fact, I saw one down the street snag a brand new truck from someone while he went inside to get a Coke. It was kind of hilarious because he came out and, he just saw it driving away and just kind of rubbed his head because he couldn't do nothing. Guess what? That guy probably is going to have a hard time going to work now. And he's going to have a hard time coming up with even more money. And the fees from the government are not going to go down when the standard of living for everyone becomes harder to deal with. Instead, they're going up. Like just here in New Mexico, all of the fees that allow you to drive on the roads, own property, licensing, etc., all of that's going up. And at the same time, there's no jobs for anyone. But don't worry about it because they're opening up dispensaries on every block. And also Planned Parenthood. So not only can you sit around and not have a future, but you can be lethargic while you do it. Now, I'm an advocate for the plant. I like the plant. It's got a lot of uses, but it seems ironic to me that the legalization finally had some leeway at the same time as the economic situation is going to collapse. And I see people giving away every dollar that they got because they really don't have that much money and they work at a job that's probably not more than minimum wage, and they're spending a portion of their check on that. So it's become the new liquor store, and the entire environment in almost every little town, at least where I live, is the majority of everyone is poor. And they're never going to own land, and they're never going to do this. So what happens to those millions of people, like you said, when the food runs out and they don't really own their property or their property's been taken away by the bank? These people are going to be increasingly volatile and feel like that they've been robbed, even though they kind of helped perpetrate the system that's collapsing because of behaviors that we do. So there's a lot of blame on, say, the American people for the way that things are turning out because we've allowed this incrementalism to destroy all sense of sovereignty and rights. And when it comes down to it, I don't think that the powers that be are going to worry about your human rights or your constitutional rights when it comes time to start acquiring resources because things are bad. In other words, I have a feeling that there's going to be massive repossessions of properties. And I kind of was watching that at the beginning of 2019, and I was starting to notice that there was a trend where more and more people are getting kicked out of their homes, and then the bank owns it, and then the people that replace those homeowners are home renters. And the same goes for businesses, small businesses and stuff. Most of the time, they don't own the business, the property, actually, that they rent every month to do it. So when these dollar problems start happening, you're going to see a chain reaction unlike anything we've ever seen before, where small-time America, mom and pops, they've already been hit hard over the last couple of years. But what you were talking about with the reduction of actually the money in the bank when they change over to a digital system, a lot of people are just going to be left out because the transformation of wealth is already been it's going to be taken, and they're just not going to have the availability. And not only that, there's not the excess cash out there. And I saw one of these slides. I was showing it to everybody that you sent me that was talking about the criminalization of using paper money because they were worried about money laundering. And I brought that up last week. I've been seeing a lot of counterfeit stories, meaning that it seems like there's a flood of reasons why they need to destroy paper money or money that the government can't keep constant surveillance on, because that's what we're talking about here. When you have your own paper money at home, or your own resources, you can do just about whatever you want in a barter free market system with other people. But once all of those dollars are stored away in a digital mainframe somewhere. Every single dollar is tracked, meaning everything you do is tracked. And that kind of circles around to this new idea of what they're trying to get in to protect us from Chinese spying on us by them spying on us. And that's what this ban on TikTok's really about, is another in a long line of government expansions of power. And all of these correlate to the main population of our nation not having any power over their future. So if you do still own your land, don't let it go. It's time to turn that into a business of some kind, even if it's only a business that supports you and your family. And that's what you were bringing up. It's time to grow food. And you've been preaching this for years already. And I think people are starting to catch on that I'm going to say 80% of what I've talked, at least over the past couple of years, has happened. And even worse than we were predicting and how fast it was going to happen. And now we're seeing exactly that. It's all being changed over to this digital system, and it's going to be tied into everything that you do, from your travel to your medical history to your freedom of thought on the internet. It's all tied together. And you can see that this whole Chinese style social credit score is already implemented here. It's just that people aren't used to it, or they don't see it yet, but it's here.
Yeah, I'm curious what that Bangladeshi reporter you referred to about being arrested for reporting on food shortages or price increases. Like, everything's being centralized. So the whole scare thing of the bank runs was to get people from the mom and pop and the regional banks and the credit unions and take all that money over into JP Morgan. Well, that was causing a secondary crash. So now they said, we're going to insure everybody. Okay, awesome. But here's what happened just today. The money market, where a lot of big funds go to get billions out each day to trade and then hold on to it for 8 hours to use the money and then give it back. They're getting 4.8% for people to borrow the money on a short-term day program, overnight lending rates. But the Federal Reserve is giving 5%. So what's that doing again? That's taking all the money that would have gone over into money markets, and then that, 0.2% is now very, very enticing for those who move money for a single day. You're talking about an extra 0.2% on like $100 billion. That's millions of extra dollars. So think about that. It's all, and again, all this money that would be out on the stock market or in money markets, et cetera, is now flowing into the Fed to borrow their money because they're giving a better rate for it. It's a mixed up world. And, this hasn't really happened to the rate it's happening. And as the Fed continues to increase at a quarter percent, if they go to 4 or 5.25%, they're going to leave in the dust that 4.8% from the money market funds, and everybody's going to go to the Fed, because it's not just a 0.2, now it's almost a 0.5% difference. So the money is all being funneled into the bigs. And then once that happens, once all the money's funneled into the big institutions and they implement all these capital controls, at that point, then the reset will be on in earnest. Well, they're just converted over in a single night. We were lured into thinking that there would be a banking holiday and they would close on Friday so you couldn't take money out. We're way past that. They're going to limit what you can even transfer out digitally, and it's already begun. See you back in a couple minutes here. David DuByne, Ransom, Godwin. The Ice Age Conversations, Revolution Radio Studio A, every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Welcome back for the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm David DuByne, right here with Ransom Godwin every week, trying to keep ourselves informed, and we're trying to share this knowledge with everybody else because we're all in it together. We're going to need solutions together. So let me talk here about the Amish. I just got their newsletter. They actually print it out and mail it to you in an envelope because we're part of their Food Buy Club. Last year they were really thin a lot of times. We haven't been going in, some time, but it seems like the food's back on the plate there because they were trying to allow the cows to rest because they're going to give birth, and they wanted to make sure the mothers had enough milk and they were not being milked. So what are you going to do? You're going to have to try to find an alternative food source. So I'll read you some prices, and then you see if this is in line with your supermarket prices. This is from the Amish farms, and you'll find a lot of buyers clubs and butchers clubs, this sort of thing, if you look for them. Non-GMO turkeys, $4 a pound dressed weight. So that's a good one. And then they have 200 to 300 pound pigs available, and those are $2.05 per pound. And what do we have here? 40 to 70 pound lambs. And what do we got here for the lambs? $3.65 per pound. And they also had some beef here. If you're going to get a 500 to an 800 pound cow, you were going to spend $2.35 per pound live weight. So you multiply that. So if you had a 300 pound pig, you need to multiply it by $2.05. Now keep in mind, you're going to get to keep all the innards, the liver, the heart, all these things that our grandparents used to eat that are thrown away. You never hardly ever see these in a supermarket, but you'll be able to use that to make your own sausages, the large intestines for all these, sausage types of things that you like to create. When you order a live weight animal, they will dispatch it for you, and you basically take the whole thing home with you, unless you ask them to cut certain parts off. We're not a fan of keeping the hooves, but I know our butcher, the guy who has the farm we bought from, he's got dogs. So we're like, yeah, you can keep the hooves. Apparently dogs love to chew on them. Fresh. Okay, good. You're going to have to think about secondary, third, and tertiary food supplies. And, Ransom, thanks for sending me that Guardian article, the journalist charged over stories. And I'm super glad that me and Ransom can bring you this information every Thursday on Revolution Radio. That's why we keep it running costs. Think about donation. This free speech is getting more tightly controlled. They say a journalist was arrested in the middle of the night at 4 a.m. for spreading false news about the cost of living crisis. But wait, there's a cost of living crisis that he's reporting on, and everybody was spending so much more from food that even a single voice they're terrified of. Charged a reporter from a leading newspaper for false news. But when prices are doubling and tripling in your local market, you're not even allowed to talk about that or write about that. That's the same thing that's being done here. The blame is on the citizen that wants to take their own money out of the bank. Oh, you caused the banking failure because you wanted your money. You didn't trust the banks to leave it in. Now look what you did. So anyway, Ransom, thanks for coming back for the second hour. And those of you out here, Revolution Radio, please consider a donation to keep free speech online. And it just gets weirder by the day. Thanks for sending me that link.
Yeah, you imagine just being at your house at 4 o'clock in the morning as a journalist, and the police show up. It's like the midnight knock of the secret police. Anyway, they show up, and you're like, "What I do? Well, you wrote an article that said people are, having a hard time with living expenses, and you got to think to yourself, are you serious? I imagine the shock on this guy when this happened, right? Or he might, I don't know what the story is. Maybe he was warned, but that's the kind of future I think is about to start here in the U.S. I mean, they're already doing it on certain topics with certain companies.
Yeah, Ransom, could I jump in?
Yeah.
He was charged with smearing the image of the government because the government can't keep inflation under control. So for him saying that the vegetable prices in the market had doubled and tripled, he was smearing the image in the government because the government's supposed to be all omnipotent to take care of the people. But because they can't, he's the one in trouble for writing about the food price increases.
It kind of makes you wonder what, when I was saying that last week, that basically you can say anything you want in media or the social media companies or any of these platforms. unless there might be, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, unless there might be some really serious things going on and a lot of truth to what that topic is, because it seems like you'll strike a nerve if it's the exact thing. So it makes you wonder if you can just go ahead and track what you need to pay attention to by what's not either what's not being reported or who's being shut up and what are they trying to say. Like Julian Assange, the poor guy, I bet he never would have dreamed back in the day that being a free journalist in supposed countries that value a free press and freedom of speech, that he would have spent the last decade or so locked away for things that he told people. And it's not things that were untrue. It was the exact same thing as what you said. It embarrassed the governments of what they're doing. And right now they're being busted colluding with tech companies to suppress certain information about certain topics. So, in my opinion, this is just my lowly opinion as a peasant, but if you're telling the truth, it doesn't need to be censored. And kind of like Ron Paul said a long time ago, that if you have a good idea, you don't need to push it by force. So it makes you wonder, why the climate cartel, if you want to call them that, always tries to get involved with the country's governments to enforce their opinion on what's going on. And I say opinion because, I'm not a scientist and I don't have a degree at anything, but whenever I hear people telling me that the ocean's going to rise by the time I'm an adult, and then I'm an adult and I notice, well, the ocean didn't rise, but they're saying, well, wait a minute, it just hasn't happened yet. It's a little delayed, so it's going to happen when you're 40. Okay, I hit 40. Plymouth Rock is still at the same place as it's been since they made the rock. So what am I to believe as just a lowly peasant, with no alphabets after my name or anything? I have no letters behind my name or anything. But, my own common sense says, wait a minute, if the ocean was there at 1660 or whatever it is, and it still is today, then probably the ocean hasn't risen any. And then, today I was arguing with people on Twitter about their global warming hockey stick presentations that they put. And I'm looking at the graph and it looks horrible. I mean, it's like all cool. And then from the 1880s on their graph, it's all cool until right now. And then the CO2 and the temperature just skyrocketing into space on their graph. And then I bother to look over there at the degrees that they're saying has changed. And what they're showing is a 0.02 or 0.2 all the way up to a 0.8 and then a 1. So in a sense, I don't know about you, but when I went to school and they told me, what's that number called that's below a 1? I think that's 0. So their graph basically shows a net gain of 0 degrees warmer than from 1880, yet they're using this graph as absolute proof that mankind is destroying the planet and we're all burning up.
Well, how can you even quantify the number 1 and 0? Are you sure it's not 4? Because in my world, it can be 9. And, I can't believe you're going to bring the whole number thing up again. Didn't you know that you shouldn't ask a question and just believe the graph that was lowered in temperatures? That spike from the 1930s had been edited out. Well, until they got caught with the ClimateGate emails. Yep. We have to realize all that warming was coming out of what you referred to for the 1640s, the Maunder minimum. The coldest it had been in the last, 800 years. And it was coming out of that cold period, the coldest in 800 years. And we were coming out of that. And that's where you see those temperature rises coming in the 1800s. I dropped off for a sliver there in 1815. Not only did Mount Tambora erupt in then 1816 year without a summer, but the Dalton minimum was also ongoing during that time, which lowered global temperatures about 8/10 of a degree. And that was another natural cycle. And then from there, then it started to warm up. So we were already at a way negative anyway. I mean, you look at the medieval warming period and it was, a degree warmer average temperatures than there are today. And anybody but would like to dispute that, I would like you to go to the GISS, That is the gold standard NASA data set for the Greenland Ice Survey Project. That was the gold standard above gold standards for global temperatures based on ice core data. Going back, 400 some thousand years. It showed the medieval warm period was warmer than today. And I just don't know how, even with that GISS model still out there and the original data that they showed, they didn't drive temperatures and drop them. They used the correct temperatures, but nobody in the academia world seems to want to reference the GISS ice core data set for temperatures and CO2 concentration. I just wonder why. But while you were talking there, Ransom, I sent you a little armband image here, and also I was reading through the article while you were talking, just quickly skimming it. Now, I want to go back to the Bangladeshi reporter. This is super, super, super important for us to understand what happened to this guy. He was simply interviewing people in his local market. He's a journalist. He's walking around. High food prices. And it's a well-known thing. Since the middle of 2022, Bangladeshi food prices have skyrocketed because our local currency has fallen drastically against the U.S. dollar because of mismanagement and embezzlement. So he was around interviewing people in the market, and one laborer, quote, what is the use of this freedom we have in Bangladesh if we can't even afford the rice? Okay, that was a direct quote. See, I see how the government was scared because that quote got out, and then one rice farmer was saying, hey, man, we're backs against the wall. We can't afford the rice. Why do we even have this freedom? We need to fight for it to get it back. So by him quoting somebody at that, laborer level in Bangladesh that can't afford rice, that spooked the government to say, well, what if there's 10 million of these other same people, and they start to get the idea that they're all in the same boat and they can all work together. This is the whole point of talking about food shortages and food price increases is once people's backs against the wall. Now, you might think that this could never happen in America, but what has occurred over the last 2 weeks is just so mind-numbing that I really feel very saddened for the country in terms of the sadness that people are going to experience as their money is taken away and they have no access to their money, and what that means in this modern world when you have a house and you're evicted out of it because you can't pay the bank because you can't access your money in the bank to pay that. So, again, if you have a mortgage in a different bank than the one you have your money in, then you're not going to be able to take that and move it out over to the mortgage because it's a capital control. You can only move so much per day. So let's say you have a mortgage that, let's use an easy one, $1,000. If your capital controls are at $50, you're going to have to use up your capital control quota, 20 days in the month to try to get your full payment over to the mortgage broker or whatever bank that holds your note on your house. That's insane. That's exactly what they're talking about doing. You're going to own nothing and be happy unless you own your house already. And then you'll need a way to pay for the property taxes and your IRS bill. Like you can just see how the IRS might come swooping in and go, we don't care. There's an economic collapse. 1,000 to 1 plus, you owe us back taxes on the original amount from last year. We'll still keep that at, say 10,000 that you owed last year. That won't be revalued into the new money. Your old debt is still in the old money. You just have to participate with the new money to pay the old debt off. Indentured servitude. Welcome to the plantation, because that's where we're all headed to right now. And the whole division of historic, references and whatnot, the whole thing is to divide everybody so nobody can come together during this time. That's another distraction that we're all seeing here. But the cost of food soaring in Bangladesh, and the new privacy laws and the TikTok law. Well, they can take down anybody for any offense. The way I read it is just so broad for anything on everything at all times about anything. It's basically what's written in the paragraphs, literally. And I kid you not, you got to read it. It's just mind-blowing that the way they write for anybody for any offense of talking about anything, and even preemptively, if they think you might, they can still take action against you because they think you might communicate with somebody, use a VPN, have a discussion. If they think you might do that, they can still charge you at that time, just like the Minority Report. This is all coming together. We've talked about this, and I can't believe the speed at which it's moving. The speed is just itself something to behold. How fast the economic collapse is coming in tandem at complete censorship on the net and being able to, like, you give you that midnight knock based on the censorship, based on the TikTok law. All at the same time, you're not going to be able to get your money out. So you're going to need to grow food. We can talk to her blue in the face about it, but let me see here. Wait a second. The Amish also sent this. Here we go. If you have different ailments with your body, just tired and whatever. So let's go to the herbal soak. They give you these different directions for 3 different soaks. So every Amish household has a bathtub. The herbal soak, may I read to you, for those of you out there, please take notes, and you can listen to this rebroadcast on so many platforms. Thank you, Rumble, for joining tonight. BitChute, welcome. Vigilante TV, what up? Jeff, I know you're up at the ranch. Yeah, there seems to be a signal now. Jeff Berwick took off to his ranch too, and I'm not going to say the other person because I don't know if I could tell that they're up there. But there's been a fair few people that are putting their go bag in motion right now that are in the finance sector. And also I had a discussion with a guy that I know who might be running for office, so I won't say his name either, over in southern England. And they have started a community, and they bought a bunch of farmland together with a group of people. But one of their major investors in their farmland project was a banker themselves that they know since they were kids. You know, they all grew up in the same town. But he came back and he had a meeting with everybody at the farm. And he's like, if y'all have any money in the bank, you need to get it out now. And that was yesterday. So it's happening in the UK too. And then Barclays Bank going down. So we're going to need all these different kind of things to help soothe our bodies here. So the herbal soak, take one half of a cup of each of these: thyme, oregano, basil, lemon balm, peppermint, sage, eucalyptus leaves. Now these are all dried. Pack it in a 6-pot quart with a cover and then stew it for 20 minutes. Then add 1/2 cup of salt and 1/2 cup of red wine vinegar or apple cider vinegar and pour it into your warm bath water and soak in for 30 minutes. Now for me, that's a lot of ingredients. 1/2 cup of thyme, 1/2 cup of oregano, basil, lemon balm, peppermint, sage, eucalyptus leaves. I could see that. Those are very calming. Now we have a detox soak also. And again, working out on the farm, already have had 2 ticks that we found in the last few days. I'm covered in cuts and scrapes from all the blackberries coming up that we're planting and things. So my, I'm cut up all over my arms, and you always got to wear safety goggles and things when you're working around dust because you're just going to get scratched on the face. Fill your bathtub with water as warm as you can possibly get it. Add 2 cups of Epsom salt for every 10 gallons of water. There you go. That's a super easy one. And the wood ash soak. Although I burned a bunch of paper boxes tonight, I wouldn't use that ash for this, just only wood ash. If you get burning any kind of papers that has wax coating on it or labels or anything, don't use that one. Or if you have any infections and sores, scrapes, cuts, take 2 gallons of water and then 1/2 cup of wood ash. Heat the water up as hot as you can stand it, about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you take that in a rag and you wrap it on your arms or leg or whatever, or you actually can use bath water and get in the full bath. And again, use that 2 gallons of water and pour the entire thing in the bath and then soak into it. So anyway, that's pretty interesting stuff here. We're going to need to think 1860s again. Our lifestyles are going to move. It could be a great day because we won't be glued to the computers and things. It'll be more of a 1860s lifestyle. But think about that. There was only one newspaper that came like once a week or once every 2 weeks, and that's all the information people had, except the local community and maybe an outside, connection that they could share local gossip in the community, and that was it. Trains only pulled through like once a week. News from New York didn't arrive out for weeks, plural, way out west. So anyway, Ransom, I just rambled there for nothing. I just enjoying time on planet Earth.
Actually, you connected some dots. I was watching the Oppenheimer Ranch project. I don't know, probably a week ago or so, and he had an article up. I was looking for it right now. It was funny because it just triggered in my mind when you were talking about these soaks. People have to make sure, and I think you just uncovered a conspiracy too. So hear me out. I'm going to try to find the article here. So this article was about the toxic levels of poisons and heavy metals in your spices. And I remember you keyed off when you said thyme, one of the most, messed up of all of the lists that had super toxic levels of heavy metals was thyme. And all of these other things. And they had, I'm going to find it here for you in a second, but to make my point, you listed out some things that would help people with health, and it seems like almost a conspiracy that those same things, if you bought it through the store, like especially Great Value, which is the Walmart brand, they were heavily toxic. So somebody thinking that they're at home doing these, cures, they may have a good formula for their, or not cures, I don't want to say that word, homeopathic baths or whatever. They might think that they have a good recipe there for that. And then if they're not using real clean organic sources for those, they may be reversing what they're trying to do. In other words, if you're trying to do a heavy metal detox, you may be soaking yourself in heavy metals. And while I find that article, just think about that idea. You're talking about Amish people, which obviously are growing their own stuff, and they probably have good sources for every single ingredient on that list. But think about all of those people that are trying to do similar things, but they're buying their stuff from like Whole Foods or Walmart, and thinking that they're getting healthy products when it turns out they're not. And I'm gonna go ahead and find that article. Just think about that. I'm not going to call it a conspiracy, but ironic coincidence. That some of the same spices and herbs that are used to chelate and remove heavy metals, or do some kind of health benefit, may actually be one of the sources of the most toxic available spices and stuff. Is what people were going to use. They would be doing the reverse of what they're trying to do. Isn't that bizarre? Here, I'm going to find that article to show people too.
Yeah, because what do you consider health foods also? What they do is the binders in a lot of these tablets and what you consider the supplements. Yeah, you don't want titanium dioxide in your supplements. A lot of these things, the cellulose as well. Like your body, you're not a termite. You're not meant to process cellulose. I mean, you have to look at all the ingredients as well that are in the tablets for the binders and things. If I look at the back of a bottle of a supplement, if it has any more than unless it's, Rice Bran or something like that, and no, I was back on the shelf. Because they put 6 or 7 things, 8 things in there just to hold it together before they even give. And you never know. My friend used to do, this is way back in the 90s, though, I'll tell you. A friend of mine was a natural herbalist, and this is in the 90s. And he was telling me, oh, dude, we can't even use this stuff from China. It's way too toxic. So I have to find American or South American sources for the different herbs that I'm using and all the blends of things. That was in the 90s. Can you imagine what we're getting now? Everything just grown anywhere and thrown into a bottle that appears healthy. Mike Adams did a comparison of Moringa oleifera powders and products, and he found most of them contain lead. Unless you're growing the stuff yourself, it's just there's going to be contaminants in it.
Yeah, absolutely. They're talking about lead, arsenic, all kinds of other stuff, and it has this whole list I'm showing. Simple organic basil, right? And they're looking at it. And this is from the Consumer Reports list here, and it's showing all these things in red. They have one company like Simply Organic that got a green check mark. But when you go through this list, they're talking about black pepper, basil, and these are common ingredients to a lot of foods. Chili powder, seemed to be good, except for the Walmart had a red dot. The red one indicating that it has toxic levels of some of these things in it: arsenic, lead, etc. Coriander, excuse me, cumin. I mean,
Well,
the
that's a
list goes
huge
on.
one.
Curry
Yeah.
powder.
Full uptake.
Yeah, where was it? I was looking at the thyme. Thyme is the worst one on the market. Even the organic brands have multiple red dots on them, meaning that they're even worse than everybody. These people, Happy Belly, that are selling on Amazon, they got 3 red dots. They're not one of the brands that they showed has a green dot on it. And it goes on. And, you know, a lot of people are taking turmeric for different reasons. And they have probably 5 brands on here that get a green check mark, meaning that they tested them and that they didn't have stuff in them. But then all these other brands here with multiple red dots. So just think about what you were talking about, you know, making home remedies and just the eating, the consuming of these. Oregano, none of it on the market is clean. It's showing it, and red all the way across the board there. Nasty. So if you're not getting your, you know, herbs, spices from good sources, you're kind of defeating the purpose there. And that's something that we don't bring up a lot, is that growing your own spices at home along with your food. Well, I mean, we do bring it up a lot, but that's just as important as anything, is just having jars. Like last year, I grew a bunch of cilantro, which is great for supposedly helping remove heavy metals. And I realized if I just let it sit there until it died, and then or clip it before it's dead, and when it has the good flavored leaves on it that taste like cilantro, because when you let the plant grow a little longer, the leaves change, it has a different flavor, and then all the seeds pop out. So you can grow several and let the seeds you know, pop out all over it, and you'll have like 2 or 3 jars worth just from a couple of plants of coriander spices, and then you also have the ones that were good flavored, the cilantro leaves. If you cut those, let those dry, you could just rake them right off the plant and make a powder that tastes fresh, as if it was just cut up. And we've used that for cooking on several times. But you could have jars and jars of this built up, and it's really easy to grow. So maybe you might not have enough garden beds to grow you know, enough to go outside every day and cut some off and use it like that, or enough space to do that. However, if you're not using it and you just keep saving it in jars and jars, you know, by the time that you actually need resources to eat, you want to fall back on some of the stuff you prepped. You go to your cabinet, and what do? You got all kinds of organic spices you grew yourself. You know, it's not contaminated with anything that wasn't in your garden or on your land. You know, it wasn't handled by anybody. The odds on, you know, you getting a bacterial infection are less because it wasn't stored anywhere or shipped anywhere. And then, you know, also the flavor for your, you know, if you make spaghettis or, you know, putting squash and tomatoes and peppers in something for like a zucchini dish, any of that stuff that you would be saving in jars, you can throw those spices right in there instead of having to rely on store-bought toxic ingredients for your foods and, you know, all your herbal remedies. I mean, think about that. We really got to be aware of all of these things, and that's part of cutting back and getting away from the control grid as any other part. And it's the main part, in my opinion, because if we can control at least the majority of the food we eat and control at least the majority of the chemicals that we intake, you have a better chance of regulating your own health without any help from outside sources.
That requires you to have seeds. So let's talk about seeds for a second here. You're going to hear 3 different types of seeds: heirloom, hybrid, and GMO. So what's the definition of either or all 3 of those? Well, heirloom seeds are open pollinated seeds, which means they're naturally pollinated by others around them. They haven't been changed or altered in any way, shape, or form. It's like the original. After the ark, they put the seeds in the ground, just grown naturally since then. Unaltered seed strains, true to nature, pretty much true to type. What you plant is what you get from the parent seed. All right, that's the original, if you will, the OG of seeds. Then we have hybrid seeds, produced artificially by cross-pollinating related plants. Now, generally, these plants wouldn't get together, but for these purposes, they grow them together and cross-pollinate them artificially with a brush or whatnot. Usually they have a little bit improved characteristic over the heirloom varieties. You know, they're more resistant to drought, more resistant to whatever, infestation from bugs. Maybe they, you know, crossed it with a variety that, you know, some sort of weevil or whatnot doesn't like, or beetle borer or something like this. Then we have the GMO, which is artificially altered by changing the DNA of the plant. Unrelated genes, not in our ecosystem ever, brand new thing, typically modified, and definitely not from nature. So if you're going to be buying seed as you move forward, look for what they call open pollinator heirloom seeds. And if you can't get those, the next best would be a hybrid. But the hybrids, a lot of times you can't save that seed to grow it again. Now, it'll turn into a seed. It'll go to seed. Your plant will go to seed. When you try to germinate the following year, those hybrid seeds, a lot of times, I'm not going to say all the time, but a large percentage of the time, they do not germinate. That's the whole point. They don't. They're meant not to. So you have to go buy a new seed pack. Heirloom seeds, they've been growing for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That's the whole thing. You grow it, you save the seed, you plant it next year. You save about 25%, a good ratio. So even if you think you have a field of corn, you only have 75% of that field of that corn, because you need to save 25% of your seed for the following year for planting. And it would go with anything, whether it be the cilantro, you got to save those seeds. More of the grains, what I've been talking about, the oats, the buckwheat, that's a good one. Buckwheat, you know, by the way, if you get it early enough, like I think somewhere around the first week of May, we'll get buckwheat in. It'll come up, it'll come to seed head. We'll cut that, and then it'll grow right back, and you're going to get 2 turns on that. Now, a lot of people around here grow it for animal fodder, and they don't wait till it goes to seed, and then they just cut it, and it's like a grass, and it'll grow back. And sometimes they can get like 3 flushes, if you will, out of the buckwheat. So if you're looking for green fodder for animals, don't take it to seed, just cut it. It'll keep growing. It's like lettuce, you know, you tear a few leaves off and it'll grow back. So I thought I would throw that out there, Ransom, the heirloom, hybrid, and GMO seeds. I think it's going to be important. There's a lot of people listening that might be first-time seed buyers, or the first time you've heard this and go, uh-oh, seems like everybody else is talking about growing food. I need to too. So what are you going to go to buy in a store is the question. Actually, I have the Berkey seed catalog and the Burgess seed catalog here with me today. And I also have the True Leaf Market seed catalog. And I always get the seed catalog sent to me because I order from all of them. So all of them send me the seed catalogs every year. I bought a bunch of tobaccos this year because I have a registered farm in Tennessee, so I'm able to grow tobacco. So I'm going to try my hand at tobacco. And you know what? Note to self, I need to get the Indian Sacred. I got the Wyandotte, the Aztec, and the Rapa Nui tobaccos. Super high nicotine content, like 18%, will rock your head. They only ever used it very sparingly in ceremony. They didn't smoke it like, you know, pipe tobacco or any kind of tobaccos that has 3% nicotine. But I'm looking at it as growing my own pesticides and having it tradable because people smoke for the last 10,000 years. I don't smoke. I'm not a smoker. I just don't. So I'm able to not delve into my own product and trade it, and then also turn it into a chemical that's used in farming. So anyway, butterfly and hummingbird plants, white milkmaid plants would be a good one. I'm trying to look at the ones that are also flowers, that are also pollinators, that you can also eat. And then at the later on in the year, you can turn them into some sort of medicinal. So when I purchase, a lot of things need to have this same, like hibiscus is a good one. You can eat the flowers, you can eat the leaves as a superfood. Where a mulberry, all the leaves of the mulberry plant are a superfood. You just keep picking them, powdering them after you dry them, and you got a superfood. And then you got the berries with it too. So wherever I'm looking, I don't see plants anymore. I see food and medicine. Kind of changed the way I look at nature. But anyway, I thought I would share that with you.
I was going to ask you if the front of that catalog has orange tomatoes on it.
Orange tomatoes? No, this is the Burgess catalog that I'm looking at right now. The Berkey is in the other room, and I'm not going to get out of the chair and go get it. The Burgess Seed and Plant Company, in business for 111 years. So, they're pretty good with their stuff.
Yeah, I've been going out of my way for at least the last 3 years to collect every heirloom seed I come across, even if I don't even plan on, planting it. That's another whole thing. That's a big barter thing, and especially when you get into times where it's hard to get things. It's almost like having little bags of gold, really, right? I mean, having different kinds of vegetables, flowers, and things to be able to trade with other people, especially if you don't particularly like a specific food, but it's easy to grow where you live. You can grow that food and easily trade it for other kinds of food that you do like to eat. I mean, because it happens every year now that I've got into this. I have a bunch of seeds, like little crates full of seeds that I've collected. I started with only a little tiny box that had heirloom seeds of different kinds in it. And I just started planting those and then collecting seeds. The first year was just about collecting seeds. I grew lots of okra, lots of corn, lots of everything, and just collected all the seeds more than we ate it. The second year, I had an abundance of everything. Like I had a whole tomato jungle, and I saved every bit of those seeds because I knew that most of them were most likely hybrids, because the year before that I brought home a lot of free tomato plants that were like the little burpee tomato plants that you get from Home Depot and other stuff. I got them late in the year that year because they were all going to throw them in the trash. And that's one thing I think that people should be looking out for this year, is all of the little come-ups that other people aren't looking for. And that's damaged plants, damaged seeds, things like that. You can get them from the stores, and they're just going to throw them out most likely. So if you know someone in the store, definitely you tell them, hey, if you're going to throw that stuff out, let me have it, especially if it's seeds, because you can use those into the future at any time. You don't have to grow that this year, but just having the access to it for future growth is very important, in my opinion.
Yeah, because as you were talking, I popped open the sweet corn page here because, just going through that hybrid and open pollinator and this sort of thing. I don't see any heirloom corn varieties here. They're all hybrids. And then I found something here called an enhanced hybrid, the ambrosia variety of a sugary enhanced hybrid. So again, I was able to get Indian corn from the Amish last year. I got purple, and then I got yellow starburst. That's it, 2 varieties. But that's the original corn that was, like in Mexico, bred to become what you consider the yellow corn. They had crossbred it, sort of in a hybrid manner, but it was in a more natural fashion where, they found 2 different fields or whatnot and put it together and grew it in a controlled environment. And sometimes the seeds popped out a certain color and like, oh, that's great, I'll keep that one. And again, they grow true to color from the original plant if you have heirloom seeds. But even in Berkey, I just don't see it. Everything that's here on the corn, every corn is a hybrid corn. There's not anything from heirloom original, except, you're going to have to go around October and Halloween and get that corn. The real super dry corn that's a pretty colors. Like I say, you got the purples, the reds on it, the oranges, the starburst. It's like funky little colors all mixed into one. Like the ones I bought from the Amish down there, the entire ear was that really dark purple corn. There wasn't even a single different kernel in the entire ear. And that's what I would buy. Like the starburst corn, that was it. There wasn't even a single color inside that entire ear except for starburst color. Like, Les Paul, I did starburst. It's exactly what it looked like on each kernel of corn, like a starburst electric guitar. Wow. And the tomatoes are no different. I don't see any heirloom tomatoes here. So wherever you look, even if you're going to buy a lot of these seeds, you're going to have to wonder if you're going to be able to regrow the following year. So how much seed do you really need then? I had a seed exchange with a guy who lives near me, and all of our stuff was heirloom. I went out of my way at True Leaf Market to buy all the heirloom varieties of seeds that I could. And last year we saved a bunch of seed, but is it all going to pop out, or what's the germination rate going to be? I don't know. I'm on the continuous quest, like yourself, Ransom, to continue to buy seed. So I have like the most ridiculous seed collection of things from Asia veg. We got, and anybody out there, I've been looking for GAT seeds, KHAT seeds. And it's calendulous. Let me think about this here for a second. KHAT seeds. Let me see what it is. Oh, yeah. Catha is what we're looking at there. Khat, Khat. Comes from Yemen, Ethiopia, or Kenya. Apparently you chew on the leaves and they have a very mind. It's not anything about psychotropic or that kind of, getting some buzz on it. For some reason it's like a modafinil, but in a leaf from a plant. So it looks pretty cool. I've been trying to find seeds for this. Apparently the seeds are not illegal, but as soon as you grow it and there's leaves on it, then the leaves are illegal. So I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Oh yeah, Catha edulis, Catha edulis, Catha edulis. Oh yeah, like education. All right, my bad. My Latin's rusty. Excuse me. From the Roman days, it's been 1,500 years. Excuse me, I have to get back into my books. Catha edulis. I mean like the education, right? Because this thing apparently will allow you to explore your mind in a non-high fashion, to just let it roll, and huge productivity, unbelievable conversations. Like the mind opens up. It's a connector back to source, but in a way like modafinil does it. So maybe that's why it's not so, but it's in a really warm climate kind of area. We need a huge drainage on it, and they eat a lot, they drink a lot of water, but you need a lot of drainage, really well-drained soils, because it's grown in sort of like, Middle Eastern, sandy kind of more loamy soils. So if anybody out there who knows how to get a hold of a few of the seeds, I'd like to have them for my collection. I would never, ever grow them for the leaf. I just want them to have them in my collection. Catha edulis seeds. You got any of those there, Ransom? Got seeds?
No, I don't. But, what's so funny about that is I had a friend that came back from Qatar, and he brought me some cot leaf, and I chewed it. And the experience is like, you remember that, I forgot what the movie was, but where the guy took the pill, the
Limitless.
guy showed up and gave him, Limitless. So the chemical that's in the cot leaf is similar to that idea. It speeds up the messages from your body to your brain. And in your brain, it also speeds up the messaging going around. So when you're having thoughts, it's a stimulant, and I wouldn't compare it to other drugs. It's kind of like you said, it's its own thing. But I don't know how to explain it. It's like you're stimulated and you can think really fast. Maybe it's an illusion, maybe it's not. But from what I've read, it does indeed speed up the messages in your brain. And that brings up another topic, not just growing for food, but growing for other uses. This year I plan on growing a lot of morning glories, or 4 o'clocks and stuff like that, because, for obvious reasons, the bees love them, the hummingbirds love them. But, every once in a while, some of these plants produce some cool compounds. A lot of the nightshade plants make certain compounds, and I'm not telling anyone to use the compounds, but like there's other sources for things like DMT that are not illegal, and you can grow them. Now, I don't know about, like you said, what happens, like which circumstance they turn it into a crime or not, but I know that you can have certain flowers around that the seeds may or may not produce some of the compounds you may or may not be looking for. And then that goes back to our medicine cabinet discussion. All of these different things that you could just have growing around in your herb garden, that the pharmaceutical companies are basically making medicines out of. I'm sure if anybody out there still watches cable TV or antenna TV, because I get on there once in a while and just turn it on. I don't really watch it. It's kind of in the background, but every once in a while something comes on there that catches my eye. And last night we were joking around because I had it on antenna TV, and I swear every commercial that came on, I thought, I need that. There was one to get rid of my belly. There was one to make my hair grow back. There was one to get rid of my sciatic pain. And all of these are just like little inventions that people made. That's, this, that. But what also comes on is commercials about, cumin and what's the, I always forget the name, the one that fights cancer and stuff. I was just talking about it a minute ago. Yeah, turmeric. Like there's thousands of commercials now about turmeric. It helps you do this. It helps you do that. Buy from us. Right. And a lot of us have already been paying attention to that stuff long before. So even the pharmaceutical companies are trying to make profit off of the unique things that happen from certain plants, and they know about it. They've known about it a long time. The whole thing is that they want to make something to sell you that you could just grow yourself. That you could just have yourself. And the whole idea that people are so different than they used to be, because I keep going back to this blissful idea of when I was an ignorant child and I used to go visit my grandfather that lived in Arkansas. Now, although he didn't grow anything except for blackberries around his property, and the reason he grew those is because it wasn't to eat them. He grew them there because he knew the chiggers would accumulate right around the blackberry bushes, and he knew that if people came to start picking on stuff on his yard, they'd get a bunch of chiggers and they wouldn't want to come back. It was kind of like
you don't. That's
security.
For sure.
It's a little
those are
security
horrible,
thing.
Man. That's the most worst itching bite you've ever had from any insect ever. You wouldn't wish that on your enemy, dude.
Right, but I would still spend hours out there picking this free food. And then the whole idea that the neighbors were growing apples and peaches and apricots, and they had a little garden outside. And guess what? They weren't gardeners. They just had the garden. Like most of them had a day job that they went to, and they would come and tend their little garden, or even have a bigger garden that looked more like a real farmer's field. And they were just taking care of that with their spare time. And they were growing enough food in abundance that they constantly gave it away to the poor people around them, which I might add was me. I mean, I was so happy when one of the neighbors would come over and give my grandpa this big, bag of squash and tomatoes and cabbage and all of these other things, potatoes. I remember when I was poor as a kid, I seemed to eat the best, healthiest food ever. And I never went to the doctor. Nobody ever took me to get my, shots, and we'll leave it at that. So I never had any of that. I just grew up on organic food that people were just growing in their thing in the summer. And then I would come back to where my other grandparents lived here in New Mexico. And then that was the world of boxed food and stuff. So it didn't take me long to realize that real food tastes good. It makes you feel good. And the stuff from the store, not so much.
I hear you. Now, I'm going to tell you my morning glory story. What's the story? Not really, but I got this book, Plants of the Gods. Now, I had this book when I lived in Hawaii way back in the 90s. So I had this is a very old book, but it's been reprinted and expanded the edition. Anyway, inside the book, it shows the different plants, and I also have the Encyclopedia Pharmacopoeia as well. That shows you the sacred healing properties, hallucinogenic powers of all these different plants on the planet. Well, this one, Plants of the Gods, goes into the ceremonial usage as well as how to prepare it if you find the plant. So anyway, morning glory was super easy to find. In Hawaii, it grew everywhere. But you're looking for the purple flowered one. This is the one that has what you're talking about, the active constituents and the lysergenic acids and alkaloids that you want to get that. So you take the seeds and you crush them and you leave them in water overnight. You can do it in a tea bag or anything you like. Drink the water. And, I didn't know what I was getting into, but drank the water. Maybe about a half hour later, I threw up. And I tell you, I saw mountains with my vision, but I could see flies on a tree about miles away. That was the craziest thing. Like the eagle vision that it gave me was the most, I can't even really describe it in words. Like it's hard to even explain. Like it just kicked on after that half hour, but boom. And it was if my vision, I was an eagle that I could see anything I looked at in the really far distance was suddenly magnify and come really close to me. And then I could, within that frame, look deeper into the frame and it would magnify and come even closer again and again and again. And as soon as I wanted to stop the frame and look at what the picture was, it would stop and allow me to look there and check it out. But, and I'm talking mountains, miles and miles away. And I swear to you, I could see a gnat or a fly within the trees of those mountains at that distance. It was visually, it was the most, I can't even, like I say, I can't describe. It was the closest to being eagle, of having eagle vision of the most incredible vision of any animal on the planet, whatever species that is, whether it be bird or reptile, fish. At the highest apex of visual acuity of any animal on the planet, I attained that using that purple morning glory. It wasn't so much like a tweaky high or anything. It was just more the visual thing with a little bit of light head. But I was so surprised. And those morning glory grow everywhere, and you just have to crush the seeds, particularly the purple one. And again, morning glory is a great ground cover if you're into that, but be careful. It can get away from you. And once it starts growing roots, by the time you rip it up again, if you don't get every single root out of there, it'll start growing again. That's the same with a lot of plants, though. If you don't get every little bit of root out of that, it's just going to come up with a new one. Hey, thanks for the link. What's the link you sent me there? Yeah, that's it. The Plants of the Gods. That's exactly the same link. And I also bought the encyclopedia that goes with it for pharmacopoeia, thinking that, it's important to know all the plants around you. Not only the edibleness of it, but the medicinal uses, and then also, the properties that have been discovered from these plants to allow you to touch our creator and interact with the creator on a different level once again.
That brings up, a good topic that we don't really have time to talk about, but the education through these books. I mean, we should put together a big list of these books, and I would suggest that people look into getting a PDR, which is a physician's desk reference, which will tell you everything you need to know. This is one of the books that I've had several times. I need to get an updated one, but it'll tell you what every single pharmaceutical drug does, its side effects, its uses, etc. And in combination with books like these, like the ones you were just talking about, you can have a plethora of real world knowledge that you can use for yourself. And not only that, when you, interact that with your gardening, it's almost like a superpower, just besides the fact that the feeling that you get when you have a good crop, when you plant something, you get something, you're expecting it. And you were speaking of those corns. I have that same trip every time I unwrapped a ear of corn. I was waiting for this magical little experience. And every single time I got one with these unique patterns and stuff, because what I've been doing on my land is I've got collections of heirloom seeds, and I've been mixing them to try to get different, traits out of them. Green ones with star, Hopi blue with the star pattern, so I could get, some green plant-looking symbols. But anyway, that's a great topic that we should do on one show, is how much knowledge can you acquire with some simple books?
And those of you looking for the mammillaria cactus, remember to boil the skin, not the inner rubbery bit of the cactus. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining David DuByne, Ransom, Godwin signing off here. Solution Radio.